Welcome back to Rewitched, a charmed 1998 rewatch podcast. Join us on our journey as we recap, examine, and critique the series episode by episode from the beginning. I'm your host, Jess Sabanko.
And I'm your host, Mia Sabanko.
Now let's get into this week's episode. This week, we have a very special bonus episode. We'll be talking about the sisters' powers and the world of magic. We will go into spoiler territory for later development of the sisters' powers, so if you're a first-time viewer and you don't want to hear any spoilers, we recommend skipping this one and just joining us back next week for our usual spoiler-free recap.
Alrighty. You thinking we want to do all four sisters, I assume?
Yes, and I guess we can kind of go, do you want to go youngest to oldest or oldest to youngest?
Let's do youngest to oldest.
All right, so we'll start with Paige. Paige's powers. So what are they?
So she can orb, obviously. She's got telekinesis, but in her little white lighter way. I guess she can shapeshift too?
Yeah, she can glamour, which is like a power she'll develop later in the series.
Yeah. So aside from that, are those the only three? Like, I don't know if she has all of the white lighter ones that Leo has.
Yeah, I think the only three we really see come up are those.
Right.
So obviously, we're introduced to her, and the first power we see her use is orbing, but like in the beginning, she doesn't really have control of it. It's mostly like when she's scared, and it's only like in and out of the same place.
Exactly. Yeah, and then that definitely develops throughout. But I do love to see that in the beginning. That's like one of my, I wish I had that kind of powers. I I think I like the way that they kind of included her white lighter half as part of her witch's powers too, so that it's not exactly like Prue's, but similar.
Yeah.
So that definitely, like, I love the way the show did that.
And it's really cool to think about the fact that like you just call for something and it appears. Like that is a really awesome power to have.
Dude, you have no idea. That's like one of my, I think, yeah, I don't know. That's definitely up there. She's definitely one that I debate, like, damn, does she have the best powers? Like,
She like okay, so she has a way to teleport. She has like that telekinetic power, which is obviously super cool. And then she has that like glamoring shape-shifting power, which is also awesome as fuck. Like you could just change your appearance at any time.
yeah, I wish that it kind of sucks because I feel like we only see that really like once, maybe twice in the rest of the show. But that's like a really fascinating power. Like they have the other ones develop theirs a little more and use them more often, but Paige never really uses that one. And I think it would have been cool to see that a little more.
Definitely. And I think part of that, I mean, obviously, we're not afraid of spoilers in this episode, but I think that comes up more once she actually takes on more of her white lighter role in season 8, as opposed to like
Yeah.
when she's more in the witchy role earlier on. So maybe if we had gotten more later seasons where she was serving as a white lighter, we would have seen more of it.
Maybe it is possible. And I did wonder because the one with Glenn where she glamours herself into Glenn's fiance, I wonder because we know that the apparently their powers don't work on each other. So would the other sisters see her as just regular Paige?
I wonder that too, because if we remember, like in season 8, when they do take on the new identities, like they can
Hmm.
still see each other, but that's because it's written into the spell. So I do wonder,
Exactly.
like, in her glamours, do they still see her as Paige? And I don't
Yeah.
know the answer to that.
I know. I wish that was something that we could get the answer on. But yeah, no, the glamour is definitely an interesting one that we don't get to see as often as I would have like wished we could. But aside from that, yeah, the teleportation, being able to go wherever she'd like at any point, take the sisters, their little magical taxi. It's super awesome. And I think it's really important to the development in the future so that it's not constantly Leo having to be the one taking them to and from. You know what I mean?
Yeah, or them just driving everywhere all the time, like in seasons 1 and 2.
Yeah, seriously, like it doesn't make any sense. Does
It's
not
like,
work
oh my
so well.
God, there's an emergency. Let's drive 30 minutes across the city.
Exactly. Like, how long are they gonna wait for you?
No, I'm glad the show came up with the solution first of like Leo being able to orb them, and then of course Paige having that power too. So that was really smart on the show's behalf.
Definitely, definitely a smart move.
So overall, I mean, I feel like Paige is pretty powerful, pretty badass.
She definitely is. She's got a lot of, intense powers that can be useful in so many situations. You know what I mean? So I definitely think she's got some badass powers. I don't know. Is it like the sister with telekinesis or just the firstborn that's technically the most powerful one or
It's
something?
the firstborn, and I'll talk a little
Okay.
bit more about that when we talk about Piper, but it is always like the oldest has the most power, and I think we
Hmm.
see that reflected in a specific episode, which I'll reference later.
Okay.
Any other thoughts on Paige and her powers?
Not much. I mean, I think it fits really well. I mean, she matches the role perfectly. I think that the development that we see within her powers, it feels perfectly paced to me. I don't know, everything about it works.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I'm really looking forward to like the Super Witch storylines that we get for Paige in seasons
Hmm.
5 and 6. So I'm looking forward to that growth
Me
as well.
too. A lot.
So, Phoebe,
Phoebe, my girl Phoebe. I love Phoebe so much. I think she probably has like not that her power is still not super useful and badass, and we've learned to grow and appreciate her power as much as she has too. But I don't know, it's her power is nothing crazy to me. It's very linked on emotion.
I'm going to slightly disagree. So, I mean, obviously, when it comes to premonition, I agree. Obviously, it's useful, it comes in handy a lot, but it's obviously never going to be that active kick ass power. Levitation is kind of negligible, and I think the show agrees with us because at some point they kind of forget she has it and we never see her use it again after like probably season 5.
Yeah, pretty much.
And then empathy, I think, is a really cool power as it grows. I mean, we do see her in later seasons able to channel demonic powers using her empathic ability, which is really
True.
cool. So I do think that that power, though it might start out more on that like psychic emotional level, does become a really badass active power as she develops it.
Yeah, it absolutely does. I'm glad that they kind of found a way to keep her all of her powers more psychologically linked, minus the levitation, which I don't, that one feels out of place. We've talked about that, how the other ones had development that makes sense with their powers, but that one kind of felt out of place. But yeah, no, I like that they kept hers mostly psychologically based while also still being able to make her use it in a kick-ass way, like being able to channel other people's powers, which I think was very smart and definitely a lot more kick-ass in the end.
Definitely. And I also just like kind of like the storyline for her with like the empathy when she like can't control it. Cause I always love those little bits of like, oh my God, like we had it with Paige, right? Where like her orbing starts as a fear response. And like here we see Phoebe's empathy power start as like she just uncontrollably like feels what other people feel and it's like driving her crazy. And it's obviously that callback to when Prue became an empath in
Mhm.
season 3 and couldn't handle it. So I like that as well.
Yeah. I like it because we see like they do also touch on it and don't just like give her this power and don't explain to us like, well, wait, why did it drive Prue crazy but not her, you know? They kind of do give us that explanation and that, it wasn't meant for Prue and it was very early on. Phoebe, it happens way later when she's fully developed as a witch and it ties into her already existing powers within her. So it definitely adds up and makes a lot more sense for her to have gained that power. And I do like it. I like that we see that from her. And I feel like the emotional and psychological aspects that Phoebe has, like, because of her, like, it fits with her personality, like the powers definitely link up to how she is as a person. So
Mhm.
I can't say that they're not fitting for her?
Definitely, because I think Phoebe, even though especially in the early seasons, like it was always like, oh, like Phoebe's too reckless, like Phoebe doesn't think about her future. But Phoebe is very like compassionate, very emotionally like
Charged.
intelligent. And I
Yeah,
think that it makes sense that her powers all come from this psychic place.
I definitely agree. I would genuinely probably say that she is one of the most emotionally mature. Like even Piper, though she's the oldest, and Prue as well, like, we see them a little more with their downfalls. Like Piper with her constant overthinking and glass half empty, Prue overdoing herself and like that pridefulness, letting that take over. Phoebe seems to be more of that grounded kind of like emotionally intelligent person, like you said.
Yeah, definitely. I think Phoebe, like one of her biggest flaws is in like having a hard time letting people in,
Hmm.
which I think her powers also help her with sometimes, but also they kind of make her want to cheat the system, which is obviously that storyline we see in season 6 where she loses her powers after she's trying to use them to find a husband.
Right, exactly. Like that personal gain aspect that they don't allow here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I do overall like enjoy her powers. I think that they work really well with her character and they allow her to develop those other abilities cuz like even Leo says in season 4 like part of the reason why Phoebe trained so hard in martial arts was because she didn't have an active power and I think that's always been really useful in their fighting cuz like the difference between like Prue or Phoebe in a fight versus like Piper in a fight is so obvious.
Yeah, it's a huge difference. I mean, I'm glad we got that from Phoebe. Like I said, with the whole Prue thing, that always kind of made me like, okay, they kind of just threw her being able to fight in there where we actually saw Phoebe training, practicing, and it made sense because she didn't have that active power to help. So it definitely, I love it. I love to see that in her. That's a power within itself. Just a badass.
Exactly, yeah. Should we move to Piper?
Let's do it.
All right. So Piper two powers. Obviously, we have freezing time and blowing shit up.
Yes. Absolutely badass powers. I live for Piper's powers. I mean, how useful is that? Just die, or like, all right, pause. I need a moment.
No, literally, I saw a TikTok the other day and it was like after every episode after season 3, and it's just Piper blowing up every demon.
Yeah, literally. I love it. Like it works. It's so true. I mean, how useful is that?
No, it really is. It saves them a lot of time of having to make vanquishing potions all the time.
It really does. Or like constantly coming up with like different spells and stuff. And obviously I like that they don't make it that easy where she's able to just blow everyone up. That they'll have her be able to blow up somebody's a part of someone or just kind of slight damage instead of being able to kill them to make it for like upper level demons and stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I do absolutely love that. She's got some badass power for sure.
No, definitely. They're both really cool powers. I mean, freezing time, even from the beginning, obviously was always really useful. And blowing up is obviously super useful too. And I like the way that I think we've talked about before that the show has connected her two powers and like it's connected to the molecules and like slowing
Hmm.
them down or speeding them up. I think that's really cool and well thought out. And I think it just really fits Piper because Piper's nervousness really fits the freezing, and Piper's like anger really fits the blowing up. So it's like the two sides of her personality really influence her powers.
That's what I was actually gonna say too. Like they totally work. In the beginning, we have like Piper like, oh God, and like the freezing just makes so much sense. And then of course her blowing up is like her power like that. They definitely tie in with her personality perfectly. Like they couldn't be a better match for any of the other sisters, I don't think.
Yeah, definitely. And then in terms of what we were talking about earlier, of like the oldest sister always being the most powerful, because there are a lot of people who I've actually seen this discourse online, kind of like you were bringing up, like Paige kind of has the most powerful powers, so should Paige have been the most powerful sister? But it does seem to fall to the oldest being the most powerful. And I think the episode that reflects it the most is probably the Little Red Riding Hood episode, like the fairy tale episode, where like Piper's the one they're going after because she is the most powerful witch in the universe in that episode. And I think part of it, of course, comes from her being the oldest, and we kind of see that continue on with Wyatt, Chris, and their sister later on in the show too.
Yeah, absolutely. You're definitely right. I do see that. I think, yeah, they definitely did make it as Piper becomes the most powerful once Prue is gone. And I do think that matches up. But yeah, there is that compare and contrast where Paige does seem to have the upper hand when it comes to powers in a lot of ways. And maybe it's because she ended up putting in kind of more effort than anyone and to become like basically dedicate her life to the craft and her white lighter and witch side, you know?
Definitely. Like she does what Phoebe did early on, which is like instead of focusing on her career and these other aspects of her life, she's really focused on the magic and kind of takes a step back from career and relationship, just like we saw Phoebe doing in season one.
Exactly. And this is something that kind of lasts throughout for her because she ends up running magic school and everything. And we see Piper, but yeah, no, with her powers, they just definitely develop to be, she never got the third, but they definitely develop stronger and stronger, which we definitely see, you know?
Definitely, yes. And I think like she's even just a skilled witch overall. Like I think Piper's very knowledgeable, she's very clever. Like she has all of those Hallowell traits that the other sisters have. And even though she questions her destiny a lot, she does ultimately always do what's right for the greater good. So I do think
Absolutely.
she fits her role very well.
Me too. And it's also like another thing that we get to see within Piper a lot, where she kind of sees herself, or at least always did before Prue passed, as like, you know, the one who just tags along and freezes shit. When really like we see her working on her own sometimes when she's the one that has to pull the group together and fix things, like the Banshee episode where they lost Prue and Phoebe. She had to be the one to do it. Or the episode where Phoebe constantly is trying, which we haven't gotten to yet, but she's trying to save Miles, I think his name is, and she has to be the one to like reverse and fix everything, you know? Like we see her be able to take care of this. Or even when she has to choose between Paige and Phoebe when Cole has her like mummified. You
Yeah,
know, like she's able to step up and take, you know, not only use her just active powers, but use her knowledge and wisdom as a witch and trust her instincts and be able to save the day, you know?
yeah, definitely. Those are really good examples you cited.
Yeah, I just remembered them as I thought about it, a couple different scenarios where we got to see Piper take that action role, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Should we move to Prue?
Let's do it.
Prue, we miss you.
So much. So much. I do wish we could see, like, I wonder if Prue had been around, what they would have developed her character into, you know, like power wise. Well, every way, I guess. But with the powers, the whole being able to move things with her mind and move her body, I do think that that's very interesting. And I like that it's not exactly the same as Paige, where she's able to teleport and move her body. She's able to just like project herself, you know, into something else. So it's pretty cool to me.
Definitely. And I was really interested in the way in season three, like Prue was starting to take an interest in being able to control more in her astral self. So teaching her astral self to fight physically and also with magic. So I think that's something that probably would have been explored if she kept going on. And I wonder if her telekinesis would have like gotten to the point of Grams where she's just like, "Psh," and the demons fly out of the house.
Yeah, it probably would have developed into something crazy like that. I could totally see that happening. I mean, we definitely saw more development like slowly with her where it went from her hands to I mean her eyes to her hands to being able to astral project herself where we never get to see her actually be able to use her other active powers in that or her other active power in that form. But she is able to almost like jump inside people and you know, fight that way. So it is pretty cool. She definitely has a lot in that form too as a power within itself, you know?
Definitely. And I mean, we always saw Prue as the strongest. Like it was always very clearly developed, even like the Abraxas episode where they're like, well, the power of one obviously means you, Prue. Like there was always this idea that Prue was the strongest. And also, Prue just liked being in the leadership role, which I think comes from what we've talked about many times, which is Prue's pride, as well as
Yeah.
her just being a caring older sister.
Absolutely, yeah. That protection, that pride, that, you know, she's always had that leadership role her whole life, which we've definitely talked about several times. So this, I mean, I don't know her powers really reflect anything crazy like that, but I do think that it fits with her where it is a strong power to have, you know? And I could see her being top witch personality wise and like in other ways, but I don't know that the powers really like just based on powers, I wouldn't say like, oh, she's probably the one that's the strongest.
Yeah, I think she started out with the most effective, kind of in terms of a fight, active power. But as
Yeah.
the other sisters developed their powers, it became a much more level playing field. I also think that her powers being connected to her mind and being psychic powers, with Prue being such a like book smart, intelligent character, makes sense as well.
Right. It definitely does. Yeah. Oh, I miss her.
I know.
I miss Prue. Another thing I wanted to talk about with the whole just powers as a whole. In the episode where they go to the future and Phoebe's being burned, the powers we see in there never ever develop in the actual show. Like it's
Yeah.
way different. Piper, we've never seen her be able like even by the end, she's not able to freeze like the whole freaking town like she was in that. And we're talking 10 years in the future, which we get very close to that by the end, right?
Yeah, we get to 2006 and that future episode took place in 2009. So we were about 3 years behind it by the end of
Yeah,
the series.
exactly. So you would think, and Phoebe did not develop this kind of like, you know, like that she
But
was
do
able
you
to
think
do.
that's a power that was taken away from her because she used it for evil, the way her power in a past life was taken away from her because she used it for evil?
I guess I didn't think about it like that. It definitely could be. Yeah, I guess you're right, because it's not even something that they ended up preventing. It was just something that she acknowledged as a wrongdoing. And I mean, that was kind of it.
Yeah.
Huh, that's crazy to me. I never thought about it like that. It definitely could be.
Yeah. Though, then again, I mean, I guess we never do get that far in the future. So maybe it's something she would have developed if the series continued on.
Yeah, definitely something to think about because I haven't even considered that, but it would make sense to me.
Yeah.
I wish we could see that far ahead and see what they would have done with it.
I know. It
I
just
wish they
like
could do some sort of rerun where like we see their kids all grown up or something, you know?
literally, I think, and this is kind of getting super off topic, but like rather than doing the reboot that they did, they should have just done a reboot with like the Hallowell kids. Like it would have made so much more sense in universe and like they could have brought back the original cast for stuff. Like it just would have been so
Yeah.
much better.
It definitely would have. It would have been amazing. And to just use it as like, I mean, I guess to be fair, we only really see Chris and Wyatt being brought into the world and not so much any of the other siblings until like the last episode where it like shows their, but yeah, no, it still would have been nice to see like the spin-off with all of their kids grown up and how they fit into the Charmed universe now, especially being that there's going to be men in it now, you know?
Definitely. And it would have been so interesting to have kind of like that grown up Wyatt and Chris storyline and how it changed, like as the story obviously changed as they changed history and everything.
Exactly. Definitely something I would have loved to see. But that's besides the point.
It is. It is. All right. So, kind of like the second question of this whole thing that I wanted to ask. If you had to pick any two powers, which two would you pick?
So I've been trying to think about that like all day and honestly all my life. I've had always had such a hard time narrowing it down. I want to say freezing time would be one of them. And I'm thinking orbing.
Okay. I
Yeah.
like it. I like this pairing.
Yeah. I don't know why, but they just seem so maybe it's just my need to be able to escape things because I hate people and being involved, but like how nice is that? Like I'm gonna just get out of here, bye, and teleport to wherever I want to be. or just like freeze time to give yourself like a moment to breathe, or like, you know what I mean? I don't know why. It's just I think those two would probably be my top picks if I had to pick two.
Yeah, no, honestly, like as you say it, I'm like, these really fit me as personality. I really like can see it. It really works for me.
Like I definitely either that, or I mean blowing shit up would definitely fit my personality. But how often are you gonna be blowing shit up unless you have demons constantly running around, you know?
Yeah. So blowing shit up is your honorable mention,
Yeah,
is what I'll take
exactly.
from it. All right. So if I had to pick, I would pick number one, telekinesis. I
I
mean,
knew
like
it.
I've always been all about it. I think that ability is so cool. And like I'm gonna be so embarrassing right now. Like when I was a little kid, I'd be like, you know, when there are like automatic doors, like I would always pretend I was like opening it with my mind. I was like, oof.
Oh my God, I did that all the time too. I used, oh, when I was little and Caitlin and I used to play like, you know, the charmed ones, we would pretend to be witches and we would do things like that too. And we would like split the powers evenly and decide. But like telekinesis was always one that I had a feeling you were gonna pick that one, and that was definitely one that again was like juggling with in my head.
Yeah, no, it's definitely the power I would want. And then the
Yeah.
second one I actually would pick, I really like empathy. Like I like the idea because like I feel like I always want to know what other people are thinking, and that would finally give me like the ability to not have to guess and to actually know. And it would calm so much of like my anxiety to know what people feel.
I think you're right. That's like, again, which is why it's so hard to pick these ones, but I definitely see that fitting for you, both of those, especially the empathy one. You're a very like emotionally bound person, you know, you're a huge thinker, a heavy thinker. So I kind of had a feeling that you might pick that one too. And I definitely understand because it would calm you down a lot, but also in my mind, I feel like I'd be like, it almost would stress me out more. I'm like, maybe I don't want to know what you're thinking. Like maybe I'm scared to know the truth, you know?
That's totally fair. And I think also the development of it to like channel other powers is really cool too, which is another
Yeah.
reason why I picked it. If I did have to go for a third honorable mention, I didn't give this much thought because I wasn't thinking of picking three. But
Mhm.
I might actually pick premonition. I think I'd actually really enjoy being able to see the future, even though I know that that's also like a difficult power because you also like feel and experience what it is. But I feel like Phoebe, I think I could handle it.
Yeah, I think you could too, honestly. If it were to happen, that'd be you. I see, it's just so funny because you see like the total difference between us with this, where you very much want to be in the know, and I very much want to like get away from the know.
Yeah.
Like, it's so funny. So maybe we'd make the perfect pair as charmed sisters.
No, literally, because like we have like these kind of opposite like strengths, but also like combined strengths that I feel like would make us like really effective.
Definitely. Come on, put us in this show.
No, literally.
Yeah, no, I respect those choices a lot. I will say I mean, like we said, all of the powers are just really strong, you know?
Yeah.
So hard to decide, but I don't know.
Any other just like powers in the universe that come up that you want to talk about outside of the charmed ones that you think are really cool or interesting?
I like the invisibility one that we kind of get to see where people can blend a little and move around like that. Like we see it with Gideon, and even like subtle witches have that power. The glamoring one is pretty cool. But again, I feel like that's a dangerous game to play if you have something like that, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
That's kind
I'm
of
trying
how
to
I
really
feel
think.
about Billy's power of projection, where like you can kind of, and I think Wyatt has it too, but I don't think he develops it fully until he's an adult, where like you can imagine anything and it just happens.
Oh yeah, I forgot that that's Billy's power. Wow, I do like that. I will say it's definitely a dangerous game to play, but I do like that one too.
Yeah, that one's a pretty cool one. All the teleporting powers are pretty cool because I just think
Yeah.
teleporting in general is cool.
Another big one. healing.
Yes.
Healing would definitely be like, God, a super useful power. It makes you wonder. I mean, I guess it's the whole like you can't mess with the order of the universe, but like just go to the hospital and like I'd be just saving people, you know? But no, I think healing's definitely an important one, and it's pretty freaking useful in their life.
No, definitely.
You know,
For sure.
any other ones?
I mean, we get telepathy sometimes, right? I think that's Christie's power, so her and Billy
Mhm.
can communicate telepathically, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's definitely a cool one too. Yeah, aside from that, I think that's probably my top ones, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Anything else you want to say before we wrap up?
I think I'm good. I'm glad we talked about this. It was really fun to see like your ideas on it and what you'd choose versus me, you know?
Yeah, no, this was really fun. I'm really happy we did this.
Me too, actually, yeah.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode. If you want to reach out to us or follow us on social media, we're on Instagram and TikTok at rewitched_pod. Or you can send us an email to rewitched.pod@gmail.com. Either way, we appreciate you listening and hope you'll join us back next time for season 4, episode 6, A Night to Remember.